Welcome everyone to, sorry about that, welcome everyone to the Ellsworth. God, this is chaotic tonight. Welcome to the workshop for, budget workshop. Tonight is the school department presenting, again. I know. Do you want to jump right into it? Do you have anything to say, Charlie, before we start?
Yeah, I'm just excited for the school department piece. I do have some very preliminary revenue, total departmental pending this piece. So sort of total collections that we could talk about at the end of this. Just to, level set. Again, this is like a 75% confidence. We just had a meeting with revenue and finance, 3 hours. And I know it's a big important part of this to sort of, if we're going to approve this budget at this time, what is the total picture? What would the impact be here? I think this kind of gets the ball rolling. I have a meeting with all staff, or all management staff tomorrow to do that line by line of the revenue projections and actuals versus budgeted. All of the, when we've been talking about these, where we're at as a total department across the board. But I do want to caveat that, I have not had those all staff conversations yet, so I wouldn't necessarily have all the answers here on these pieces. But it would go to what you were talking about previously, Michelle, is having closer to that kind of front page on, what is the top lines for everything? How much revenue we pull in last year? How much revenue would we pull in at this same tax rate this year versus a departmental budget? And if we want to have that conversation after the school budget, then we can maybe get additional questions that I can bring back to staff, and prior to Monday's meeting, if we do want to move forward with the school budget with where we're at on the other parts, then we'll have a little better idea of that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
And welcome, and we are very glad you're here. All right.
My turn?
Your turn.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us again. I do want to say that administrators may be popping in at different times. There is a big event going on at the elementary middle school. And so a couple of my administrators are at that. And then I have a couple of administrators speaking to a college class in Orono, aspiring teachers. And so when they're done, they're going to zip over here as well. So people may be coming in and out from the school department. So wanted tonight to go into more depth for the budget so that you had a deeper understanding of exactly what's in here. My last presentation was more of an overview. And so tonight, based on feedback I got from Finance Committee and different members of the council with information they wanted, I've put together some more detail and then have an opportunity at the end for you to ask questions and dive even deeper if you want. So just to review, our budget process started back in November, really, to try to meet Monday's deadline that the city put forth to us to make sure that we got the vote on time in June for our budget to go into existence July 1. Have met with Finance Committee, have come to the council once already and again tonight. So I feel good that we continue to build our collaboration and transparency with the city. I think that's been great both ways. Just to remind people, we went into this budget process with very specific goals. Education has changed dramatically post-COVID. I hate saying that and continuing to bring COVID up, but it has changed dramatically since then. And so really looking at, having done my first budget last year, I feel like I have more of a handle on where we're at and where we need to go to build a school system more than what it is right now, so that we can be proud of. And that changes with the times and with the way kids are learning nowadays as well. So really trying to build a budget that is respectful and responsible to taxpayers, but also continues to move our school system forward in a positive direction and builds us towards a better future for the kids of the city. A goal for sure was looking at early learning and building in a pre-K system to our school. We've continued with Heather Martin as a collaborator this year, working with council, school board, school department staff, and also with our area early learning providers to try to come up with some long-term solutions for the crisis we do have in Ellsworth. That's not unlike other places to help with early learning. Value our people. You'll see that almost in every cost center we've had raises for our people. This was a year that I did 4 negotiated agreements. And I will say that in many many areas, we were very behind other county counterparts with how we paid or what we paid for a wage. So negotiations were certainly a big impact on this budget. The whole student, I know you've heard in the news, behavior and social emotional learning has drastically changed. And so we're having to deal with needs and issues in our schools that we've never had to deal with before. So that certainly is a goal of this budget. And then finally, we've really worked hard to start really making more data-driven decisions. What's the data telling us? Where are our needs? What's working? What's not working? And making budgetary decisions based on that. So as I mentioned last time, what are some of the challenges and threats to our budget? I would say there wasn't good planning moving forward, which is why last year we were in the situation we were in. I felt like we made a good step forward last year, and people were really respectful and understanding of where we were and what we needed. And so those threats, though, like I said last year, were not a one-year fix. It was going to be a multi-year process. And that's true not just of our budget, but some of the other issues that we're dealing with in the school system. Unfunded mandates are killing us in legislation. We got a memo today about the new hourly wage law that's coming through that's going to mandate 150% over minimum wage for educational technicians starting in FY26 and 125% over minimum wage for all other hourly school employees. That's going to have a huge impact on school budgets. They expect that to go into effect 25-26, but they're saying they're going to help districts offset the costs. But starting in FY26, it's going to be on locals to do that. There will be no more state funding. So it's going to be really important that the legislative advocacy role of council and the school board really starts to communicate with people about these things, because it is adding enormous burden to taxpayers statewide, in my opinion. Our facilities have complex needs, like we talked about last year, that we're continuing to work to address in a way that's fiscally responsible and keeps our people and students safe. Increasingly complex student and family needs. And really the biggest thing that we are going to face moving forward is people do not want to work in schools the way they once did. Teacher applications are down. There are shortages in many, many areas, and that's not just true for teachers. That's true for administrators. That's true for your hourly people. So we really are working. You'll see it when I talk about the cost centers. People are now starting to do sign-on bonuses for different positions. Like, it's crazy. Because it used to be that when you advertised for, let's say, a K-8 teaching position, you'd have 35 applicants. Now you're in a position where you're looking at 2 or 3. So it's very, very different than even it was just a few years ago. So last time I provided you with our October 1 numbers, so I just wanted to show you those again. And so now if you go to your budget sheet that I gave you, what we're going to do is I'm going to go through the top part. So what you have on the top part on your sheet on the left is each individual cost center. Last year's 23-24 budgeted, this year's proposed budgeted, the difference and the percentage increase. So what I'm going to do right now is go through each of the cost centers, explain what's included in that, how many staff are in that, and then what are the changes that you see so that you can understand what the increase is. So for your first line, regular instruction is your cost center. That's up 17%. That includes pretty much all your K-12 regular programming, staffing, your teachers, your English as a second language or English language learners, your gifted and talented program, 504, and any costs related to those areas are included under regular instruction, okay? In that is 101 salary position and 9.5 hourly positions. The changes to make up the 17% include the 2 preschool classrooms. As a reminder, we eliminated a kindergarten teaching position and a first grade teaching position and transitioned people into the 2 pre-K classroom teaching positions. So it was a wash and not an addition. There are, however, 2 mandatory preschool ed techs. You have to have a teacher and an ed tech in every pre-K classroom. So the teachers offset each other, but there's 2 additional ed techs budgeted in this area for those 2 classrooms that we will have to hire. So those are 2 new positions. Under every cost center, you're going to see negotiated agreements, which means the mandated raises, 10% increase to health insurance across the board. That's, we budgeted and we came in at like 9.8 or something like that. Like it was, And then the new unfunded mandate of the paid FMLA tax, which is the 1% of all your payroll that has to be added to our budget right off the top. Our BCBA position is a behavior position, a board-certified behavior analyst that works at our K-8 school currently and helps teachers with strategies in the classroom. She's the one that does all the behavior plans for kids that have behavior issues. She trains teachers. She's partnering with administrators, working with individual kids. That position is included in this. And then a remote instructor is in the budget. This is something that schools around us are doing that we have not done, that we would like to do next year. Schools are losing students left and right because they can't walk through the door. There are a lot of students who have severe anxiety or mental health issues and can't physically come to school. They can learn, they can attend, but they can't function in our school settings. And what's happening is those kids are dropping out. So we're not counting them on our enrollment, we're losing them educationally, and then they're gonna end up being contributing members of our society. So there were pilot programs done around the state where one teacher teaches remotely and the kids stay home and do their courses over the computer with that instructor checking in. The school districts can count those students back on their subsidy rolls. The goal is to get them back into school and get them functioning again. And so what we would like to do is do this next year and have it be for the middle school and the high school, because believe it or not, we're starting to see this at our lower grades as well. And so we would propose, instead of having 2 different people doing this, 1 person to pilot and do both, grades 7 through 12. That's regular instruction. The next line you'll see is special education instruction. So that's your second line on your budget worksheet. This includes all of your K-12 special education services that your school provides. That includes 26 salaried positions and 60 hourly positions. That's where the majority of your special ed educational technicians are. The major changes in this area, again, the negotiated agreements, insurance, the tax. And then in this line, one of the biggest things that we are finding is we have 1 social worker for the 780 students at our school, and we're over the recommended student amount. So what we would like to do is hire another social worker who would specifically work with students with disabilities in 504 who have mandatory social work services as part of their IEP, which we, of course, are obligated to provide. So that our other social worker can work with students who have counseling needs in the school. So that would kind of divvy that up. Career and technical education is your next cost center. So for us, because we are a center and not a region, this is its own cost center in our budget. This includes all the staffing, all the facilities, the programming, the curriculum, anything having to do with HCTC falls in this one cost center. This is 13 salary positions, and this does it. I need to do an update. 13 salary positions, 7 hourly positions. The changes in this budget is, again, the negotiations, but we do have a new carpentry program that is starting in the fall. It's been a huge push and a need. When Sumner Memorial High School was built, they have the perfect space, and there are actually 24 students that have applied to be in the program, so we are thrilled about that. So that is an addition to the CTE cost center. Other instruction is all your co-curricular athletics, summer school, and after-school programming. That's our one salaried position, which is your athletic director at Ellsworth High School. And the only major changes in this area is increase in stipends to be competitive with area schools. This was an area that had not been touched in years and years and years and years. We were grossly behind other area schools that are much smaller than us with what we pay our coaches and VPA stipended positions. So we made some changes to our formula to help offset that. Student and staff services is your guidance department, health services, so your nurses, curriculum, instructional staff training, your library, all instructional technology, and student assessment. That's 12.8 salary positions and 7 hourly positions in that area. The 0.8, you'll see the 0.2 under system administration. It's curriculum assessment and the assistant superintendent. Major changes, investment in review of curriculum with regards to literacy, high school math, and that should say et cetera. We have a lot of work to do with curriculum instruction and assessment, and we've started that work this year. So there is an investment in our budget to look at that and to make some changes instructionally and with curriculum. System administration. This is all your school board costs, the superintendent's office, and our finance business department. You'll see that there are 3.2 salary positions and 2 hourly positions. So one of the biggest changes in this budget is our financial software system is not going to be existent soon. And so we have to do a complete purchase and overhaul of our entire financial systems. So our finance committee has moved forward on the recommendation of our finance team. And we're going to look to start that implementation and change over next year. So the cost for that is in this budget. Office of the Principals is your principal's offices at both schools. That's 5 salary positions and 5 hourly positions. The only major changes there are negotiated agreements, salary and benefits, and then the paid FMLA tax. Like, every time I say it, I'm so mad. Our facilities cost center is all of our district buildings. 2 salaried positions, 24 hourly positions. This was one of our big negotiated agreements that we just wrapped up and is going to be voted on tomorrow night. We are looking to try to accomplish a lot of our facilities work through energy efficiencies. We're actually going to go to the school board tomorrow night and talk to them about a proposal for doing a lot of our facilities work through a different kind of out-of-the-box way, like we've been trying to talk about for the last year. So we're excited about that. And through this budget process, it used to be that we had 3 salary positions, and we've reduced that to 2. We've combined the custodial supervisor and the maintenance supervisor into 1 supervisor. Transportation, you'll see a big percentage increase in this area. This is all transportation costs for the district. Right now, there is 1 salaried position and 22 hourly positions. Those are all of your bus drivers and your van drivers, okay? We just did major negotiations with this group. I don't know if you've seen the news, but you can't find bus and van drivers. So in this budget, we have buses that are over the recommended mileage amount and that need to be replaced. So right now, last year, we did 1 bus replacement. And so those of you that are new, what happens is if you put in time with the state, you can receive subsidy for your buses, but you don't receive subsidy until the year later. You start getting your subsidy then. So we did this for 1 bus last year, and in this budget currently there are 2, because we have 2 over that magic, I think it's 100,000 miles of what we're supposed to be. And what's happening is our fleet is getting older, and we are paying astronomical repair amounts to get those buses fixed. So we've got to get into a cycle where we start working on replenishing our fleet, which is what this budget does. We're also looking at the purchase of an 11-passenger van. We've worked hard to get different quotes. You'll see in Ellsworth, a lot of our neighboring districts have them and run HCTC kids through. We do a lot of runs that if we had an 11-passenger van, it would be much more cost-effective than running a bus. So we would like to see some of our smaller trips take the van, and we believe the offset of the savings of running those buses for those trips would pay for the van. We are also now implementing a new model that if someone comes to us and says, I'd love to drive a bus for you, but I don't have my license, we will pay for their coursework. And then they sign an MOU that they'll drive for us for 2 or 3 years, depending on the situation. And people now are paying for those classes for their employees because you can't get drivers to do it. And it's several $1,000s a class. So that is in the budget. And then finally, right now, any bus incidents that occur are literally on an old-fashioned tape. And so this budget is an update of video surveillance on the buses because we are different than other school systems and our buses have kindergarten through grade 12 on one bus. That is a behavior challenge at times. So when bus drivers have behavioral issues, they are literally pulling the tape off the buses, driving them to the school, and then we're uploading them and watching them, and this would be technology where they could just watch it live. So that's on here as well, which honestly, I need to buy my administrators some time back, and this will be a huge time saver for my bus people and my school administrators, because literally bus complaints are daily to investigate. Debt service. What you'll see is we're still paying for Ellsworth Elementary Middle School. For those of you that are new, if you look at our debt service line up top and you look at 1.989, if you go down under revenues and look at non-state funded debt service and state debt service reimbursement, those two numbers added together equal the debt service number up at the top. So it offsets, but that's how we have to financially put that in there. So that's your payment for EEMS. And then finally, the last cost center is our school nutrition program. It's food. That's 1 salary position and 12 hourly positions. So there's actually a second change I should have put in here. The first is we did do an overhaul to increase their wages because they were being paid not competitively. So we did an increase for them. And then the second thing is, last year we had COVID grant money to help offset the cost of food, and we don't have that this year. So that's a direct reflection of this increase for this line, is that. And then adult education is not part of the general fund budget. So that's why you see a total, and then underneath you see adult education. The way the state funds adult education, they're not considered part of your general fund, so they're listed separately. Doesn't mean they're not as important. They are highly valued. People in Ellsworth love our adult education program, but I wanted to make sure you knew that that's why they're separated out, is because they're not a part of that general fund. So budget to budget from 23-24 to 24-25, we're up 11.55, which I know sounds high, but I'm shocked at what some other communities are doing. And then if you go down to the revenues, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of these. The most important, the first one that I want to talk to you about is general fund balance. So through 24-25, you could carry 9% for your fund balance, okay? For 25 to 26, or FY 25-26, they want it back down to 5. So schools are starting to make the transition to go from that 9 to the 5, because when you get to FY 26, you've got to be at 5%, okay? So we have taken, for fund balance forward, we've put $1 million there, which is an increase of $250,000 to help offset for taxpayers. CTE balance forward. CTE's fund balance has to be legally separated out from the general fund balance because it's its own cost center. So that we felt comfortable at $90,000. Tuition is spelled out for you for the amount. And now I've got to find my cheat sheet. So last time you had asked about how is tuition determined. And so we did go, Amy Atherton worked to find the actual definition of how the tuition rate is established. So it says tuition charges for high school or secondary school students are governed by the following. The tuition rate is the sum of all expenditures divided by the number of students. Expenditures are expenditures for your high school for the period July 1st to June 30th of the year immediately before the school year for which the tuition charge is computed. But it doesn't include special education costs, career and technical education, community services, major capital outlay, debt retirement, tuition, and transportation. So it doesn't include those. So even when you get a tuition student, it doesn't fully cover the cost, okay? Just like subsidy doesn't, they say it should fully cover the cost, it doesn't fully cover the cost because it doesn't account for everything that goes into opening a school every day. So this year, for 2024, our tuition rate for the high school is $12,760, which is higher than last year. But the state maximum amount is $13,300. So the most you're allowed to charge for tuition is $13,300, and we're at $12,760. Okay? CTE assessment, the line under tuition, is the way our agreement is with our sending schools is we determine the budget, we receive state subsidy for CTE, and then there's always a difference, right? Because subsidy doesn't cover the cost. So we then take that variance and divide it by the number of students we have, and we charge an additional rate to each town for that difference. So if Bucksport sends us 20 students and we say the variance is $800, they pay $800 per student that they send to us. So that's our projected revenue for CTE for next year on that line. And then we've talked about the next few, state subsidy and our CTE allocation is on the bottom. Miscellaneous revenue is things like Fletcher's Landing, state agency client, any kind of other miscellaneous revenue that comes in, rentals, whatever it may be. All of that goes into that line. And then that brings us to, for grand total local appropriation, 8.87. So when I came last time, we were at 6.99, but I said I had 4 agreements to do, and those accounted for over 100 employees. And so those 4 agreements, all of those raises are now in the budget. And when I came to finance on Friday, I was at 9.05. We've done some work the last couple of days, and we've got it to 8.87, which is half of what it was last year. So I feel like we're going in the right direction. The next slide that's up here, I kind of wanted to show the percentage of our budget, that's our fixed cost, is 90% of our budget. And so I thought that was important for people to understand that these are all things that are fixed or that we have to have. Things we took out of this budget were the technology position, the kindergarten teacher, grade 1, the maintenance supervisor. And then things that we're starting to think about moving forward in addition to the facilities work that needs to happen. We are still working on our strategic planning process. which as we continue to gather that information, that's gonna give us really good information for what the goals of the community are for the education system. Are we headed in the right direction? And that'll give us action steps and priorities for the next 5 years, which we can then tie to our budgetary decisions. We really have to start thinking about how we're going to recruit and retain people to continue to work in the field of education. That's a bigger than Ellsworth problem, but selfishly, I want the best people to want to work for us here. And then we have to consider thinking about how school has changed and kids' brain research is different, kids are learning different. We have to start thinking outside of the box and offering a different kind of education for a lot of different subsets of kids while maintaining the integrity of our high school diploma and making sure that we're offering high-quality education. So again, just to show where we're at for per pupil expenditures, this is for FY '23. This data comes out a year behind. And so kind of what we wanted to talk about at this point was get your feedback, answer questions that you may have. If there's things you want more detail about, we can dig in and answer those. School board is planning on voting on the budget tomorrow night, and then the plan had been to have you vote on our budget Monday night to meet the timelines. So really, if that is going to happen, it's like I said last time, it's really important I get, really clear guidance on what you're looking for. Is this what you're looking for? What more do you need for information? So that we can do the work we need to do so that it passes and we're not continuing down the rabbit hole. So any questions you have, we're ready. Except I want water.
Casey?
I don't really have a question, just my thoughts. I am comfortable with this budget. I would vote for this budget. To me, the per pupil cost is the most striking and frankly the most important thing. So I think, as you've all heard me say before, like, this budget actually isn't enough money, but you've all done a good job. I can't believe you got it down to 8.87%. Seems like pretty reasonable. I just wanted to make a couple comments. One was, I did manage to print off our front sheet for last year's budget thing, and I made a copy if anybody else wants one. So just looking at the city appropriation for the school department since 2019, the year-over-year percent change from 2019 was 1.93%, city appropriation 2.9%, minus 0.89%, 0.06%, minus 0.42%, and then last year 16.95%. So part of what makes all of this hard is that previous city councils have just neglected the school. And so this isn't a matter of suddenly wanting to spend more money. This is a matter of finally catching up with recognizing what the school actually needs, what our kids actually deserve. So it probably should go up another 16% this year, but I know it's not going to, and that's fine. But I just really think that's an important piece to understand. The other piece I think is really important to understand is, so last year, we had a scary budget meetings because you were going up 16%, and I think we were all kind of freaking out about that, honestly, and wondering what's the city going to think. For a 16.95% increase, we voted on it, June 29th of 23. 322 people voted yes, 98 people voted no. So to me, that just makes me believe this city actually cares about the education of their children. Yes, they care about not raising taxes. They deeply care about not raising taxes, but they know that we shouldn't be doing it on the backs of the children. So to me, that is a super clear mandate to continue moving forward with supporting the school. I think those are all the things I thought. I mean, you guys have worked so hard to make this happen. The school board, of course, has been reviewing all of this, so these are your recommendations to us, and I respect your recommendations.
I appreciate that. And just to comment, it's a really good point and something that I should have reiterated more. So that's what's been really hard about coming into this position, and we've kind of talked about that, is for those several years when there were no increases, it really sent us closer to the end of this fiscal cliff. Plus you were getting COVID grant funding and you had all this stuff, and then now here we are on the cliff. And so last year at 16%, we knew that was a huge ask. We knew it was a huge increase, but because of the less than 1%, we had to have that to stabilize us. And I do feel that this school budget takes us from 16 to 8. We recognize the commitment that was made by the school board, the city council, and taxpayers last year. We know it was a huge ask. But if we go back again, we looked at this, and I believe, I don't want to share my screen. Can you go all the way down? So if we were to get it back to 6.99, which was my first draft without all the raises, we would have to cut $254,000 from the budget. And that isn't like a section of a roof. That is multiple things, either multiple positions or several things in combination. I mean, to get to 6.99 is a huge burn. And so that's part of the reason why I tried to find something that I felt like was reasonable, but still helped us move forward, because we got a lot of work to do. I don't want people to feel negative, but there's a lot of work to do in our school system. It's so trying to find a sweet spot where we're continuing the downward trajectory, 16 to 8, and keep moving that and continue to find ways of efficiency, but not decimating our programming and trying to figure it out. It is trying to find that sweet spot. And I feel like over the last few weeks, we've tried really hard to do that with this budget. Others?
I have a question so I can understand. What's the duration of the labor negotiations that you've just finished? How
So
many
3 years.
3 years.
Yep.
What was the COLA?
So over 3% is kind of what people are looking at for COLA. However, in some areas, we were so behind averages, people got more than 3% in some negotiated agreements.
Okay. Can you explain the video on the buses again? Just the new camera is so that the driver can see what's happening behind them?
No. So what will happen is the cameras on the buses can record runs.
Yeah.
So when there's a major incident, the assistant principal at the elementary middle school, instead of waiting for a bus driver to bring over a tape, will be able to log into the server and watch
So
the video.
Does it live stream or it's,
No, it's not
But
live
it's just
stream,
recorded and in
recorded.
the cloud?
Yes.
okay. The idea of the remote instructor.
Yeah.
Can you talk more about, as that's coming to accommodate the kids who, I
Mm-hmm.
assume, a lasting effect of COVID and being at home,
Combination
trying
of
to
things,
come back
yes.
out again, what are the strategies being used to bring them back into school and into community and being functioning?
So it
Human
depends. So what the model is that we've looked at is you make an individual plan with the family and the school. And some kids, what we have found, some will maybe start with one class in school and do others remotely. And I think sometimes people think this is going to be the kids that struggle the most academically. And in fact, a lot of times kids are taking online college classes during this program. And so you set goals, and not all probably will return to school, but the goal is to have them either involved in a co-curricular. They have to attend meetings at the school with the instructor, like once a week or once every 10 days, depending on what their goal is.
Okay.
Even if it's at 3:30, when not all of the kids are there. So you start just kind of individualizing the plans for each kid with the goal of eventually hoping that they'll participate in some way in the school. But some definitely don't participate at all in some of the schools we've looked at. Some kids don't come back to school.
What do you see for their futures? And I'm not saying this, I guess I'm off of the budget right now and more into the bigger pictures that you were talking
Yeah.
about.
So that's part of this, is I'm hoping that for some of these students, we will either get them engaged at HCTC. It could be that we engage them with adult ed over time. Kids could still do internships and do workforce things for credit. Really trying to give them some skills.
So are they okay leaving their houses, just not the structure?
Some can leave their houses and be fine going into the community. For some, it's the amount of students.
Right.
For some, it's the social anxiety and the stress of that and the crowds. Our schools are big. Our schools are big. And right now, with the way they are and the hustle and bustle, that's really stressful on some kids. And the uncertainty of what's going to happen in the hallway between classes today.
But those are life skills that these
They
kids
are.
will
I don't
learn, I hope.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
But that is a very, very common major issue that all schools are dealing with right now.
So you'd said part of it was COVID. What are the other causes you think for?
All kinds of
That-
things. I mean, some people say the technology use and the increased technology increase. Brain research has changed. It's a variety of things. Some is social. And some of it is family and economic. Some kids are not coming to school because they're taking care of their baby siblings at home. And so they're providing a family life function for their family to survive so mom or dad can go to work. I mean, there's a lot of different
Okay.
factors.
One more question. I want to better, number one, what does CTE stand for?
Career and technical education.
Okay, I knew it was tied to the center. I couldn't
Yeah,
figure, I couldn't
that's
match
okay.
it to the letters. Can you talk with me more so I can understand the general fund balance for what these numbers are? If these, I'm assuming there is a fund, and this is the amount that you pull out. So I don't, okay, you're shaking your head no, so.
Do you, yeah, go ahead. This is Carolyn Heller, my finance director.
Oh, we all need one of those.
I would agree.
Yeah.
So our fund balance is basically the surplus
Right.
of what we have budgeted but not expended at the end of the year. And it accumulates, preferably it accumulates over time, it doesn't go down. And just like in your household, you want to have a healthy amount of money in the
Right.
bank account so
Yeah.
that a rainy day, you have something to fall back on. So we want to be very responsible in how we use that fund balance. But we use it to help offset what we'd otherwise have to ask the taxpayers to provide to us to fully fund our budget, since we don't get as much subsidy as we would like to get from the state.
So I understand the purpose of a fund. This dollar value is in the revenue section, meaning it's, so where is it coming from? What is the balance of that? And I think you're drawing it down, so it's the 5% instead of the 9%.
Yeah.
So this is money on these lines that comes out of your safety net. And this current year, it's 750, you're gonna draw down $1 million this time because of the drawdown requirement. So what is that balance, the safety net,
Well, it's not truly the drawdown requirement, I'll touch on that, and I'm not quite sure what it is you're asking, but.
drawdown makes me think that there is an account, and you're drawing down from the account to a revenue line item here, as you said, so that you're not requiring money from taxpayers.
Can I help?
Yeah.
So in a business, you have your revenue and you have your expenses. And
Right.
then you have your profit, right?
Right.
So in a municipality, we have the same thing. In a school department, you
Yeah.
have the revenue and you have what they've expensed.
Right,
What they're saying is this $1 million is what's left over that they didn't expense. So their
Okay.
drawdown probably is the wrong thing, it sounds like a bank, but what they're gonna do is they're gonna use that surplus from 2020, are we in 2024? And they're gonna apply that surplus to 2025 to offset the revenue. So it's really just, it's just a paper thing, they're not really drawing down money, it's not an account, it's sitting in
We've
our,
already
it's sitting in
collected
our
those
general
taxes.
fund. It's just, they're gonna use that surplus money, and they're gonna apply it to this year so they can offset.
Okay, so it is surplus from the prior year, it's not a dry down of, I was envisioning like, is there a bank account that's got 40 million and you're drawing down 1 million? So it's rollover
wish.
from the prior year. Thank you.
You got it.
I appreciate that, rollover from the prior year I can
You
get.
got it.
Thank you. That was all I had, thank you.
So, if you don't mind, I got a few questions, does anybody wanna go ahead of me? Do you guys have questions, Stephen?
I do, but I'm going after you.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions. Are you refunding any of your reserves with any of this money?
So that is one thing we want to talk about. We were not going to apply any fund balance towards reserves, except we wanted to have a discussion about the possibility of having $100,000 added to the facilities reserve for unanticipated startup costs for Avery Lane.
Okay.
Other
That
than
was my next
that,
question.
we were not going to use any more fund balance to up our reserves.
Okay, and what about debt for Avery Lane?
So until I see that financing, that's
That'll
not
have
in
to be-
this, Avery Lane is not in here at all. Right now, it's all of our leases are in here.
Okay. So will there be money in the fund balance after the $1 million to move
Yes.
that to cover it? Okay.
Yeah, we're not depleting our fund balance.
Okay, I just want to make sure that the new building, we're voting on that in May. So the wage increases, I'm assuming it was a big increase this year, and then it's normal increases the next two? So you won't have these massive increases again next year?
No, what I will say is, I don't want to say that completely, though. If this law passes,
Yeah,
that's going to go out the window a little bit.
yeah. Do you have any capital and building repairs included in this budget?
So that's what I kind of alluded to. So there's some small things in the budget. So we've been working with EMC Energy Management, and they are actually going to propose tomorrow night to the school board entering into, I'm going to say this wrong, but a tax exempt lease purchase. I got that right. Where the monthly payments of that are actually offset through energy savings and rebates that we could get. So that includes the next phase of the roof at EHS. It includes the 6th grade wing roof at EEMS. It includes a lot of the heat pumps that are broken being repaired. It includes the next phase of the windows, and none of those projects are in this budget. Because he believes that cost-wise, and looking at it, and we've called other school departments that are doing the same thing, between the rebates you can get from Efficiency Maine and the cost savings we'd have from, because we'd also be doing the boiler plant at EHS, which was on the list of needing to be done. All of those changes and upgrades would lead to cost savings that would offset the payment.
Fantastic.
Yes.
And then my last question is the track.
Yeah, not in here.
Yeah, so I do worry about that. mean, it's-
I would agree.
So I just didn't know, if it's not in this budget, if we can really, and Charlie, we can explain that a little better, but it's something that the school department needs, but so does the entire county. The entire county uses that track, and I think that we need to come up with a plan to
So
fix it.
Charlie and I have met and talked about it.
Oh, you have?
Just on
Okay,
an
good.
initial scope, like, new guy comes in and you shock and awe him with everything you want. I was on his tour the first week, and I did that with him, and the track was on the list. So what I will say is, when we looked at reserve accounts last year, Amy found that there was a school department reserve account created for Deluse lighting upgrades.
I
So,
think that's old, because I think that happened when I was here.
so there's $100,000 in a reserve account that is when we went back and found the language, it is completely earmarked for Deluse lighting upgrades. So we have 100,000 of the project. Project might be 1.2 million, Charlie, but we got 100,000
No, it's only
in a lighting
1.1.
reserve. I mean, we would not be opposed to putting additional money into that reserve to help start building that up. It wouldn't be able to be a lot, but, I mean, we could do a little bit. But we definitely need a plan for that track because our track meets are not gonna be able to be held there after this year. This'll be it.
We really have to lean on the county
We do.
to help us.
They formally does. Yeah, that's another whole,
That's another
story.
whole-
But they do, because it is a county facility. It's not just the City of Ellsworth that uses it. It's
Everybody
definitely
uses
not
it.
just the City of Ellsworth School Department that uses it, so,
Yeah.
And we did ask to be on the agenda and we were denied.
yeah.
And they just had a meeting to discuss their
I
other
saw.
funding too.
Yeah, and I just think I think it's very short-sighted of them. And I think if we lose that track, and that's an area that a lot of that other schools use and that other organizations and nonprofits use, I just think it's a tragedy that could be offset by
Mhm.
the county.
Am I misremembering us discussing the use of ARPA funds for that?
Yeah,
Last
so it
year.
was gonna be a share. The city had talked
Yes.
about, the finance office committee had talked about using ARPA funds, our ARPA funds,
And
asking the,
county.
and then using, and some of the county plus,
It was like gonna be a
reserve money
third,
and
a
some of
third,
the-
a
Yeah,
third.
third.
yeah,
Yep.
and so, but we couldn't get on the agenda. The county won't let us on the agenda because they say they don't give the ARPA funds to municipalities. And this isn't, we can't even get into have that discussion.
Yeah,
Hopefully
when
they're
I,
listening.
when I
Charlie
requested,
on him.
I
Yeah.
said, I have letters, this is not a municipality project. I am simply the superintendent spearheading the efforts. And I said, we have letters of support from outside organizations that are beyond Ellsworth. And I was told, no.
Do we need to make a group called Friends of the Ellsworth Track or something like that?
We may need something.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Because it really does. It would be
It-
such a shame to not have that
Well,
track.
I mean, we put those like the bleachers are new, like, there's just, I mean, everybody went up there for the eclipse watching. I mean, it's a beautiful.
It is.
It would be a shame to let that go.
Yeah, I watched their meeting, but yeah, it was mostly public safety stuff. They were
Mhm.
kind of considering cameras over the courthouse, which is going to be changing. But I also have an email from their administrator, so maybe I'll try and get a meeting on the books. Not that, I know they have a time limit for these. I think we had, yeah, to your point, we do have, we're talking next budget meeting about ARPA
ARPA funds,
and
yeah.
capital, and we'll get an update on kind of what's left there, but no promises, but that plus 100K.
And that was my last question.
People can say no. People can always continue to say no, but
Yeah,
Keep
I think we
asking.
should try.
Not if you don't
we should try
ask.
harder.
Challenge them to a race on the track.
Play,
Ooh, there you go.
Winners.
play the new card. Help me understand.
I'm just gonna tell you, it's not gonna be me racing.
I had a couple questions.
Sure, John.
The special ed, I noticed there were a lot of hourly workers
Yeah.
over the salary worker. Is there a particular reason for that?
So, the way special education works is students have IEPs, or individualized educational plans. Whatever those plans call for, schools are legally obligated to provide, okay? We have a lot of students who have to have one-to-one supervision. And so, rather than hiring a full-time teacher, you hire educational technicians, and they do those small group or one-to-one supports for those students. So district-wide, that's how many special education ed techs we have.
Makes sense. The unfunded mandate, I think you mentioned again, that if that becomes law, that will change that top line, that salary line. But you mentioned as well that it might be funded through the state until FY '26.
So, we just got something in at 4 o'clock this afternoon that it was going to the Senate next, and urging everyone to continue to call. So it's not clear yet, and then after, they believe it's gonna pass at the Senate, and then it's gonna go to appropriations. So, part of the push is they want appropriations to fund the first year of the difference, okay? I don't think appropriations is gonna have that money, nor is it gonna allocate that for that. I don't think, I could be wrong. And so, if they do though, they would fund 25, 26, but then it would be up to taxpayers for FY '27, for the 26, 27 school year.
So that's gonna be putting your minimum wage at about $30 an hour? right? 150% over.
over
minimum.
whatever the minimum wage is
So
of
minimum
that
wage is like
time.
$12.50, so you're 20.
It's higher than
They're
that,
gonna be
I
over
think.
$30 an hour minimum wage.
It's like
for school.
14.
No, 150, just,
150%.
150%, so double plus another half.
You know, 60.
Oh, it's not?
1 point.
One plus a half.
It's
Yeah.
100% increase would be double.
If I take my screen off share, I can.
It's like time and a
Not
half.
100% increase, 150% of.
is not the
Oh,
increase.
I thought it was
That's-
150% increase, and I'm like, God, that's
No.
like, oh, okay.
So it goes
No, but
21.
it's still.
Oh, so then it's
21,
like,
22.
it's like $18 or $19 minimum wage, okay.
Well, which, geez, I mean,
1875.
you're gonna be an ed tech or you're gonna work at Dunkin' Donuts. It seems like you should make more money
I
being
was
an
gonna
ed
say
tech than
that.
working
And
at Dunkin'
that's,
Donuts.
so part of the
Yeah.
issue is, this is kind of gross, right? Because people all believe that the workers deserve that money. It's not a matter of that. So people feel really bad speaking out against hourly school employees not getting this legislation. The fundamental problem with it is groups have negotiations. And so what's gonna happen is, why did we just spend all that time doing negotiations if you're going to then make us reopen contracts we've agreed to, because you have to bring the minimum up?
So these are all unionized employees.
Uh-huh.
So what is their current salary? Or what
It's
have you
different
currently
for-
budgeted?
It's different for every hourly employee.
For these that
depending
you're
on-
talking about, the ed techs?
It is very different. So this would cover ed techs, which have their own negotiated agreement. Administrative assistants have their own pay raise. It would be your food service. It would be all of them.
I'm confused, because you had said LD 1974 was just for,
It's, ed techs is the 150%.
right.
And
Oh,
then
that's right, and
all
the
other
others were
hourly
1
is
to-
125.
25% above minimum wage. So
Mm-hmm.
just curious, how much higher that, I mean, if it's going to be $18 an
It's a
hour,
lot
what
better
is
than I thought it was gonna be.
currently?
I just-
Yeah.
150% increase.
I mean, is that a $2 increase? Is it it's not a $10 increase. I think we got that.
It's hard to calculate that. I mean, you can calculate it right now based on now's minimum wage, but it's gonna change by the time this gets implemented.
But that at least gives
So
us
I can
an understanding.
I can email you
Yeah.
the starting of every single, because for every single hourly, it's different. The base is different for every single
It
one.
really should, I mean, you could have a lot of hundreds of employees, but it would be nice to know what the range is.
Yeah.
For those that are
Because that-
impacted by
And
the bill.
we can do that, because we had to
Yeah.
provide it. I just don't have it with me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The other line item that was mostly athletic department and after-school stuff, there was one salaried employee.
Yeah, Mr. Frost.
So the large increase there is mostly not the salary increase, but
Correct.
is
So
other
all of our
equipment.
stipended positions, so all of your VPA, drama, math team coaches, all your athletic coaches, all of our stipended positions fall under this line.
Okay.
But I didn't give you a count of all the stipends.
Okay, so that is going to people, it's,
Yes.
I just want to iterate or reiterate the importance of that, because the middle school hasn't had anybody to do drama or show choir for a really long time, so it's good if we can pay them enough, so they, but now you do.
Now we do. We're doing a spring show, so I'm very excited.
Remember our first one?
I was like, yes, we do.
And just regarding the increase of, the mandated increase, even if it's $1 an hour for 148.5 hourly employees, you're talking 300,000 right there. So it adds up really fast, even if it is an average of $1 per employee.
Thank you, my math person. So I bring them.
But then the narrative person, which is my specialty, is you're having a hard time hiring. So it's not like this is throwing away money. It's like having a hard time hiring. Now you're
Yes.
forced to pay more. We've got to pay for it, hopefully. It alleviates
And-
the problem that's been a theme through your presentation.
Yes, and one of the big things in our
Yeah.
core negotiations this winter has been our hourly employees were way under where
Right.
our counterparts, they can drive 15 miles and get paid more.
Yeah. So if you've brought that up, and then statewide, it may be neutralized with this.
And I think in some areas we'll be on target, I do. And then others will probably have to raise.
Okay.
It's the poor school departments that I feel bad for.
Well,
They
that's,
mandate that and they don't subsidize because.
that's the
it just
issue
puts
that's
more pressure on
frustrating.
those kids having a school.
Yes.
That's not a fair mandate.
Well, when you do that and you do 1% of payroll for paid FMLA tax, like, they just keep adding. And that's hard.
One last curveball.
Sure, John.
Last night we saw was that last night? Water departments, last week, sewer, wastewater, anyway. There was a lot of big.
It was less.
We were here last
Last year, I don't remember.
You've been here all the time,
Seems like
John.
you're
You were here when I got here. That was
I
early.
think I slept here. We saw a lot of creative approaches to funding huge projects using earmarked funds that were meant for sewer to do wastewater, but parts of it that were sewer, like a lot of very clever things. And then
Yep.
I was reminded of that when you mentioned that the state subsidizes only certain line items, like excluding transportation and some others, and I wonder if there are any clever ways to, still get those cameras, but those aren't really transportation, those are part of a different, see what I'm saying?
So I will tell you, the team has worked really hard, both leadership and finance, to really try to find any grant funding that we can to cover anything that we can, because of that very thing. You have to start thinking outside of the box. Everything we want and need, we can't fund on the burden of taxpayers. So whenever we can, we are really trying to either be creative and/or apply for competitive grant funding, and/or state funding to try to find what we can to help offset these things, for sure. All right,
Your turn.
Mr. O'Halloran.
There you go, Mr.
You've been patiently waiting. It's not 10, Steve.
I'm sorry?
It's not 10%. Just remember that.
Well, I just want to throw out a couple of observations, a couple of questions. And my first question is, you mentioned that you charge 12.7 for tuition from other towns sending students here, but the maximum was 13.3 or something like that, which is
Yes.
$600 per student that's left on the table. Is there a reason that's left on the table? Is there some reciprocal agreement? Is there,
So
Tell
the
me about that.
state sets what the mandatory allowable tuition rate is, okay? And they use your prior year expenditures divided by the number of students you have to decide what your rate is, okay? So for us, if we were gonna get to 13,300, we would have to expend $274,000 more at our high school.
so in other words, it's regulated. It's not you're just leaving it on the table. The
No.
state says you can only charge
Correct.
12.7. or whatever you
Correct.
said. Okay.
If we wanted to get to that rate, we'd have to increase our expenditures at the high school by that 274,000 amount, which would then get us to be able to charge 13.3, which is the maximum allowable.
And how many students are we talking about? Where does the math fall
It was
there?
200 for 2024.
Oh.
When you had explained to us last time, right, that's part of this whole, we only spend 15,000 something per
Mhm.
student. If we spent more per student, we could charge more for our tuition.
Yes.
So you're charging all that's allowed based on your expenditures. It's not like you've left
Correct.
money there.
Oh,
Okay.
Steve, if I could charge more, I would.
But you'd have to have a year, it's a year behind. So you'd have to have a year that you weren't reimbursed for that, and then you'd get it the next year. So you'd have a.
It's your year prior expenditures.
Yeah, so, yeah, you're only gonna, yeah, so you got $120,000 on the table, but you gotta spend 274 to get it. Okay, very well.
You got it.
You shot me down.
See, it was a good thing to
The next question I have is on the municipal side, the police found some perceived savings with leasing equipment as opposed to buying equipment. Police cars through Enterprise. They suddenly explored this, and it's perceived, I don't know how it's worked out, but that there was some real perceived benefits financially of looking into leasing of equipment. I'm wondering if that is an opportunity with your vans, with Enterprise, and I'm not just saying Enterprise, that's who the city used, even the Public Works used them with their plow trucks from Enterprise. And you mentioned vans, and I'm wondering if there's opportunities there, and school buses, to realize some savings. And again, it's only perceived, we haven't seen the numbers, we just saw the presentation last year, and they're actively doing it. So I just have to wonder if there are opportunities
Okay.
in that area that police have enjoyed and Public Works have enjoyed.
We could certainly look into it for the van. I would think the buses, though, I think you have to go through the state, for the state subsidy, we have to go through their,
There would be no subsidy if we don't buy.
right, okay. Okay.
It could be, I'm not saying that there is
Yeah.
savings, I'm asking.
We-
that-
I haven't looked at that,
Right.
Steve.
And
We'd
we
have to
saw
look at
that,
it.
pretty big numbers, what we saw
Yeah,
here.
significant.
And so there might be some legwork there.
Because it's the van.
Look at Keston getting an electric school bus, I think entirely by a grant of some sort. I mean, I don't know where
So
that came
they
from,
say
but
that, but it's not real.
It's not real. Bus isn't coming?
If you
Impossible
can
to get.
even imagine, they say we'll fully fund it, and then you find out, no, they'll only fund like a percentage of it, and you pay for the rest.
Okay.
And what they don't always cover is one of the hiccups that we've had. So we did apply a year ago, but we would have had to pay for 60%?
Yeah.
60% of it. And we don't own our bus garage. And so we would have had to put in the charging station. And honestly, the feedback school systems are giving about the electric school buses is not good.
Good luck getting them to start on a cold day.
Yeah.
My electric car
But-
starts on a cold day.
I think the starting's fine, it's how long they'll go.
Yeah,
How
it will
long they
last.
go.
But we
They've
have,
been-
we have
there's a lot of
explored
ones
that.
started.
Okay.
We have explored that.
Is yours garaged?
We did buy a propane bus a couple of years back.
Yes.
We had some very nice subsidy on that, some very nice grant opportunities there.
Interesting.
How'd that work out?
Hmm?
How did that work out?
I understand that it's wonderful.
Propane bus, interesting.
The LLB,
sorry.
buses are propane as well?
Island Explorer.
The other thing I noticed, and again, just Casey gave us a 6-year budget, and you've got your 7th year here. Your $1.2 million increase this year equates to $143 per person if there's 8,400 people in the city. That means everyone needs to kick in $143 towards this increase. Something to be noted. But on the other side of that, when you look at your 6-year average increase, it averages 3.42% over 6 years. That's the average increase, which is commendable. You throw the 7th year in there, and it's 4.2% over 7 years. So although there's been big and little and so on, if you put the 7-year or the 6-year picture, it's really impressive that it's, pick your number, 3.42 or 4.2, whether it's a 6-year or 7-year. That's pretty reasonable if you look at it in that light. That's it.
Just kidding, I'm just kidding.
It's a good-
25% in 2 years.
Tammy, you got any?
I'm sorry?
No,
It's
I, like,
25%.
all
I
the questions that I
understand,
had,
I understand,
like,
but
I'll
over-
ask and, yeah, no.
Just making sure I didn't leave you out.
No, no, they're just, I was like, oh, that was my question.
And I was kidding, because it's a 25% increase in 2 years.
No, 12.91 average.
No.
I thought it was 16, oh, okay,
He's
sorry.
taking averages.
12 point, so it's a 12.9. I really enjoy that, you can tell that I don't have my calculator in front of me and I'm lost.
You're like,
I know. And I do appreciate that because you had those years of nothing, that we have to increase. And I very much appreciate your comment of keeping it going at a steady pace. Because a steady
Yes.
pace is much easier than doing a 16% 1 year,
Yes.
9%.
And then 0,
8.87%.
that's my goal, is I want to
Exactly,
get
so-
us here.
Exactly, and and I appreciate that we do that. I would rather have years of, a few percent every year.
Yes.
Rather than that big one last year, I still hear about it,
I know.
And I know that
Me
only
too.
300 people voted, and shame on them, but, it's still,
Well, whatever the number was, it was 3 to 1.
Yeah.
3 to 1 approval.
Exactly.
Yeah.
400 people.
but I hope that we can keep doing it this way, not 9% every year, but.
Right, oh,
at least a-
absolutely. Absolutely.
It'd be interesting to see how much of the unfunded mandate, what percentage that is of this increase. Do we have that?
I think we could figure it out. We did at one
About
point.
the
The paid
FMLA.
FMLA.
I feel like we shouldn't think about it.
No, but I mean, I think those are some talking points for.
Yeah.
When people ask you why, we can provide you with
Yeah.
that.
But the bill hasn't passed, so that's not in this
Paid
bill.
FMLA has.
Okay, true. Okay.
Like my kid's going to college next year, and I'm not thinking about that.
Me either.
No, I'm gonna think about that some other time.
Seems like a good investment if we're thinking macro. Yes, we need housing, yes, immediately we need to fix the potholes, but the way to grow, I think a good way to grow a city is to invest in education. We're looking at the HCTC programs in construction, carpentry, paying teachers a higher wage, they can live better, they can live here, they can send their kids to a good school, or kindergarten programs. I think it's a good way to, it'll take a while, but it'll pay back in the long run.
So do we feel good about just looking for final, yes, for now?
Can we hear some of the
Yeah, we can talk
big
about it.
city
I think
numbers?
we might be able to feel good.
Is that?
Yeah, we can transition to that conversation, and I think, and then you all can decide the questions you'll have, and, I think in some ways, we have a first pass of piecing together this. I'll be able to get this with new, hopefully by the end of this week, but we can talk about what this, I have enough, I can spread the papers and we can talk about where we're at, what revenue projections are for next year, what all-in school budget plus if you were to grant everything on the other administrative sides, where we'd be at. It appears as though there'd still be a little bit of cushion under last year's TIF rate. That there'd still be additional cushion even with the full school amount, that you could potentially lower the mill rate. That's the other last piece that I have to talk to Larry about tomorrow, on how much you could lower the mill rate based on our current.
Without increasing assessment.
Yeah, but assessments also, that's another piece that's coming in April, and a little later in April, is that, like, he hasn't done his new property tax assessment, so that's your numerator for what we're gonna base the mill rate off of. He thinks it's gonna be about a 5% increase, so, of property values, so, I don't have what a new mill rate is to get you these
So,
projections.
but from new,
Well-
new
Well, it
construction,
depends on where we are with
From
this
new-
evaluation.
from new construction, if he
And-
says there's a 5% increase, is it 5% increase across the board?
Yeah.
Or is it a 5% increase due to new construction in the city?
I think his total valuation is what he
So
was,
he would be
but
increasing
that's
it.
a good,
He's doing
He's
an
definitely
increase.
increasing it.
but let me,
Because there's no
but it
way
might not
we
be,
can
I
increase
didn't
it.
clarify, he
Two
said I
budgets
think it's
that
gonna be
are
about
increasing.
5%, I assume that's just a total valuation figure.
Okay, and it could be from new
It's
construction.
impossible, and it is 27% increase.
But if we,
That's a huge.
if we want to let,
Cumulative.
Because he was talking about average.
if we want to let school go, and I can take you through what these numbers are now, and we can do some, we can talk kind of where we're at, I can take you where we're going, or do you want me to, again, I've had about 3 hours of finance about this, and Matt, and tomorrow we have an all-staff meeting to discuss them in more details. There are some questions that I have already.
Yeah, I think with me, it's like last night, just giving us numbers. I struggle with that. I would rather have you talk with staff and,
And then
because what the revenue is going to be and what the mill rate's gonna be, we haven't even seen the entire budget. We haven't made any decisions on expenditures or anything, so I don't even know honestly how much our budget expenses are totaling right now.
Well, I have that.
You do have that?
Yep.
For
Yep.
all departments?
Basically, I have the pieces that turn into this, except for a mill rate calculation based on new
So that's-
valuations, but that's not that's not what we're gonna have by Monday for sure. It's the last piece, although I can talk to Larry and see if he could start doing those calculations. But I have everything else except for in these pieces. Again, I haven't been able to put them together, but I have total revenues, I have total departmental budgets, and I just did the additional million here, which was kind of the last piece. The only one thing I have some questions, like, do we have FMLA added in here? I don't know that yet. And there's a variety of things, because we still don't have some pieces of the revenue in budget. We actually have, actuals versus budgeted for last year in these pieces too. And I have a bunch of questions on those little details that I want to talk to staff about. We're still about 2 million shy of, we budgeted to pull in from the FY '24 budget for 25,541,000. We're only at 21 actual right now, so we're still about 4.5 million, or 4 million shy of our goal, but we have 2.5 million in property taxes that are still out there. Just in the, and I'm still trying to find out the personal property, that's just the actual property. So there's, we could make it pretty close to that, we might be a little under. So these are some of the, I do have what this would be now, but I still have to do tons of staff work.
Yeah,
to
you're like,
get-
you have a rough draft. is what
Rough
it is.
draft.
Yeah.
The rough draft says right now that we're, we'd be potentially pulling in 30,639,000 in total, including school budgets. The new one, we're asking for 27,993,307. Based on the previous year's mill rate of 17.3, I believe. It might be 17.5.
17.5 on this.
It says 17.5 on this, but that's another question I had. Is they
Yeah, I'm
said-
not 100% sure that's right.
They
but
said,
it is what it says.
they said 17.3, so that was, again, I
That
gotta,
number changes every
yeah,
time
it
we
was,
talk about
I said it said 17.5 here, they said actually it ended up being 17.3. I heard Larry does have some discrepancy on how he calculates that, like the high end and the low end, so, again, those are and then there's the other piece, which is the current general fund, and kind of our fund balance and where we're at. And is that in the 8 to 12% range, which is sort of the typical for a municipal government to hold two months of expenses, just like school. So that we're, and in some of those pieces, which would also, I think, be important for how, if you were going to decide on what you go right. Again, we're not there yet, that's the other piece, but you all have to feel comfortable enough to do the budget now for school on Monday, or if you want to know the entire picture, and to your point, Michelle, you're not going to have the full picture of what everybody's asked for and what you'd like to go forward with or not.
Yeah, I mean, what do you have for a total, you have total revenues, what do you have for total appropriation for the city?
Total appropriation is 27 million, including school, 27,999,000. I can pass it around.
Yeah, that would be good, so,
That's-
yeah.
And I don't know if you want to keep school for this piece, we can let people.
I mean, only that we have to let them know.
At least one
Yeah.
page.
Just enough info.
You need one?
Nope, I got one. I'll pass them around. So again, these are like,
That's reducing the city budget by more than $10 million, it's not possible.
It's not, yeah, that's
We
why
haven't
something's
seen any
wrong.
reductions in any.
No.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm not paying attention here.
and this might be helpful for me to just know what I need to flag for staff. And I'll take you through these. And this is the last one.
That's revenue, did we have?
This is what's still outstanding,
Okay.
tax collection.
And I have a question, maybe, doesn't need to be said into the mic, is this the same? Same.
That's just outstanding debts for
Thank you.
You know, this is the balance sheet, this is all the what I tried to get to, and we kind of went sideways there, was, I would love to see the balance.
Yeah,
Like,
that-
what are in the balance accounts, just to understand.
That is not here now. I've heard a number that is larger than what we would need to fund 8 to 12% on it. So just to take you through this quickly on the revenues, I'll start with the revenue sheet, this piece.
The teeny tiny font?
Yeah, the teeny tiny font. There's some things that are just, right away that I'm gonna pink through. We don't have, because of the audit piece, you'll see budgeted actuals for FY '25 for budget, and then the actuals for '24.
This is great.
But you'll see '23 budget, but you won't see an actual for '23. That's part of the audit of what, and I'm gonna add a new column in there, just so it's visually seen that this is like a blank year. Because I was having trouble beforehand, going from 2 to 2 to 2. You'll also see, I think, the big one in the property taxes, the 19,938, is the actuals. It was budgeted, sorry, the top.
Right up top,
Yep,
got it,
the
thank
very
you.
top, and one of the big ones in terms of revenue is, you're expecting to get about 23,697 in FY budget. We're still a little shy of 20 million. I don't know exactly how the tranching works here in terms of when we get bursts, but talking to Sue tonight, I had her pull, and that's what this last sheet is. We have 2.1 million in outstanding taxes that she's about to send letters saying, hey, this is your last chance.
That helps cash flow, but that doesn't help a budget.
No.
No, that's
You've
just
already
gonna,
recorded your-
that's gonna get the actuals closer to budgeted
Oh.
for FY. So they were expecting, they budgeted to get in FY '24 this 23,697 for property taxes. We've only pulled in 19,938. So my question initially was, hey, did we miss our projection here? Are we 4 million off our?
No, if the revenue is recorded, like as soon as you send your tax bill, it's recorded as a revenue.
So you're saying that this 19 million will not change at all?
That should be what you
Regardless of what
collected.
this.
No, it should be
Regardless of what
I'm trying to
this.
find out what we,
it should be the 24,583,121. That should be, because as soon as you commit a tax, you record that revenue immediately.
So you're saying this
And
act-
it's an AR.
Right.
But how would that change, how would we have a budget that didn't match an actual? I mean, you could run a deficit because you didn't pull in enough.
It's governmental accounting. You have to do it that way.
So this is gonna stand, this 19 million actuals.
No,
It should
you
be
don't have
24,
actuals.
583,121.
It's like
Where are you
your
getting the
profit's there, but
24?
your cash flow hasn't met yet.
Oh,
It's still
yes.
reported as we
Oh,
made all
different
this,
form,
it's just
that's
still
why?
coming in.
Yeah.
So this is a wrong number, this first one.
Yeah.
Your taxes aren't cash basis. Your
Right.
taxes are accrued. When you make your commitment that you're gonna raise $24 million in taxes,
You-
it's recorded as a revenue.
It's recorded as
You don't do
revenue.
actuals.
just-
You don't do actuals, and I'm not
You
positive.
can do a percentage of how much you've collected, if you want to record it that way, or report it, it's not really a recording.
So maybe this is recorded or reported, because, yeah, so you're saying this can't really exist like that, you can't budget
No.
and then have an actual that says.
You can your other
For-
taxes, your excise taxes and stuff, absolutely you can, but
Yeah.
not your property taxes.
It's good information, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
So they either are recording it wrong, or they're reporting this wrong in
It's-
here.
I don't think it hurts to see the cash and the budget.
I do worry that we're past the payment date, and we must have that much in liens that we haven't received the 24 million that we committed.
I don't know that they sent out a notice, though, a second.
Yeah, but you
Which usually
shouldn't have.
goes out in May or June.
And that's this
Do we
piece.
normally have $6 million, or $5 million in liens?
Does
2
anybody
million.
know?
Isn't
I
it
think to
just
this
two-
week,
Oh,
we
yeah.
committed
Okay,
24
here's the
million.
property taxes due.
I'm showing two, for that balance due. Yeah, some of these numbers aren't matching up, because I'm even showing on this one right here, Michelle, the RE one.
Yeah.
Did you get that one? It's showing 2.2 million balance due for 2024.
Yeah, and this is the one that says 24 for the property tax due and 21 received.
That makes
But-
more sense.
Yes.
But where this 19 number is, again, so you're saying the way it's supposed to be reported, it's always going to be that number matching. And that makes more sense of what actually, when I saw FY '22 budget and actuals, the fact that they're the exact same number, I thought that was just an impossibility.
That was the year.
Unless Sue, like, but that's how they should
all.
always report, is what you're saying, is that you should always have really those two are the exact same thing. You budget it, it's money in the bank.
You may collect it years down the road, but
Right.
you're collecting it for that
And
percent.
And for the
that
reporting
percent.
purposes in governmental accounting, it has to look the same. So that
So this
FY.
looks like the AR number, like the accounts receivable numbers.
Right, so it's
Yeah.
just, and that makes, because I was very suspicious of FY '22 actual budgeted coming into the dollar. But
Yes,
in
that's
some ways,
exactly the reason.
that's the way it has to be.
Yes.
Right.
That's not a suspicious account.
No.
What's suspicious is actually the FY '24 budget to actual, because that doesn't match the dollar. That's being reported in wrong, okay.
The other thing is they're projecting for '25, the property taxes.
Staying the same.
Yeah, it should be 0 at this point.
Yeah, it's actually reduced, and it should be 0 at this point, because you make that determination from our
Yeah.
budgets minus the
That-
revenues that we're
that's-
bringing
But,
in.
and that's the piece, it's not, this is Larry's piece on the new valuation. What they did, just so you could get, if you're thinking towards schools and what's gonna be there,
Okay.
it was exactly the same as last year. There's no increases, and the mill rate was the same. This is, and we assume that you just pull in the same value you pulled in previously, that this would be, now you could pull in lower. And
Yeah,
then.
you're just trying to give us a rough sketch so that we can make a decision about the budget
Yeah.
without putting it.
And also, like, I'm happy to flag a lot of these questions so I can also go through staff and the team.
And I can maybe meet with you at some point after work.
That was also my recommendation, Ann, is you and maybe Michelle, who's also, it's nice to have two former finance directors. And you guys can rake us over the coals on all these, and then we can.
Yeah, and I think if, just for me, and it's just the way my brain works, if I could just, if I can take this home and look at it.
Yeah.
But I think once you talk to staff and we have more realistic numbers, and then, like, I think that I could probably get a better grasp for Monday night. I know I'm the pain in the neck here on that, but
Yeah, and
I think
that's-
it's very important that the finance office get us that information. Not that I don't want the school department to have this money, I want to be informed, and I want to be able to say that I'm informed of the effect of the school department, plus what we want to do coming up.
Yep.
You know, are we going to have to, if it's too much of a negative effect with the school department getting this money, it means the city has to make it up. And I just want to be aware of that.
And I think there's sort of, we talked about this before, it's not gonna be next year, but the year after that, that's hopefully going to change, and then these things can all come together, so you can make a full budget decision and then push and pull from each piece. And the consequence of pushing this back now would be a $7,000 roughly, I'd have to make that decision now, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Can I just add one thing, which is it's kind of also, I think, right, like this is a rough draft and you're working on all of that and it's so important. We don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. I just don't see any reason postpone the school budget vote and deal with whatever it is that you call it when we accidentally go past
Continuing resolution.
continuing resolution, extra thing, because we are wishing for something more complete than we're gonna be able to get.
Yeah.
To me, it still feels really important to make this vote on Monday.
I think it is, but I think it's also important to have the information. I think you're doing exactly the right thing, because
Right.
if we went from what we had yesterday, I would be asking for a continuing resolution. But if we've got some numbers that we can draft off of and have an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't need perfect, but, and from what you're
Right.
giving me, I can make a summary page.
Looks like last year.
Yeah, and if I had another 6 hours and it was
No,
a
I
different
know,
time, I
know.
could.
And so, after you meet with staff, maybe you could send something out to all of us, so
Yeah.
that we could look at it?
Yeah, and we'll definitely have a summary page tomorrow.
Okay.
And I've got a bunch of notes here, the big ones we already talked about. The other big one, which I'm not, and this might be the other piece, is just what the current fund balance is. And some of the tracking of the accounts, is that, how confident are we on that piece? In that there's not additional public works stuff and this and that, that's kind of the encumbrance side of things that we talked about in previous budgets. And that there's not a bunch of encumbrance hanging out in there, that's,
Well, we actually have no encumbrances?
Yeah.
We need to know what needs to be encumbered this year.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Correct.
You're saying because we didn't do that.
We haven't done any in 3 years or so.
No, and there are, and we'll have capital discussion, we're gonna go through this, highway is a good example, that has, hey, we're gonna do this, we did this, there's actually money from last year, but how do you wanna actually handle that?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And that matches back to some grants and to some other funding. So that, to me, that's the other big picture I'm not gonna be 100% on, and to your point, Michelle, so that you can say, hey, school budget is here, and we're in enough cushion that, like, we can cut from other things to get where we want with mill. But
Well, and I would say, you know, once Charlie finishes that work and you're able to put it all together, if there's like red flags, our school board's not voting on the budget till 6 o'clock tomorrow night. So if I need to make changes so that the school board can vote and the vote can still happen on Monday, you just gotta communicate with me. Because the board was gonna vote tomorrow night so that you had their vote for Monday night to set that timeline up. And so if you get the summary page and big picture and you're like, oh, the sky's gonna fall, we cannot do this, then I'll either have to get to work and we'll postpone our vote, or I'll do some revisions tomorrow
Yeah.
to be ready for 6 o'clock.
I'm
It'd be
hoping that-
painful, but
yeah.
that's the one change.
we could do it.
Yeah.
I put it in my own, but
It's not, I mean, the continuing resolution is not a great option. It
I know.
really and truly isn't. It would have to be desperate to do something like that, honestly.
Okay.
It's just,
I get it.
okay,
I
thank you.
really do.
Thank you.
I get it. I do. It's like I said earlier, we were given by the city this fall, not Charlie, but from staff here, a very strict deadline, and we have been pushing and pushing and pushing to even get to 8.8 and get to this place tonight. And so it would simmer people right over to
Well,
find
and
out that everything was gonna get pushed back.
And that's another shame, is that we have to have that election. And-
100%.
And that's what pushes that. And so
Yes.
people think it gives a better option of keeping the mill rate low, but what it does is it pushes us into decisions.
That we're not ready to
That we're
make.
not ready to
I
make.
agree.
And I'm hoping that some year we're going to be able to go
I
back
think
to the
it's
way
2
we
more
used to be.
years. We don't have to do it anymore.
I should just, while we're on school for this piece, if you're in your general government draft, the one change I did make on mine based on this is we had the old school at 13,46971. I added it to, I changed that by hand to 14,664.
Yeah.
80, and then that gives you a new total of 27,993,307. And then again, if you're just straight lining for last year's mill rate on the same amount of property, expecting, that 30,639 is your, but Michelle and, Tammy, that's one of the things I'm gonna talk to staff more, get more there, and then I think that's the big question, how confident you are in that piece, that delta.
Because it looks like it's come down 2 million from last year.
Right.
Yeah.
Good
which
job.
doesn't make
No,
sense.
No, it doesn't.
No, I should also thank Ann and new Nate.
Is that what you call him, new Nate?
Yeah, we have OG Nate in the box. I know that they wanted to get it kind of, but time constraints were what they were, but especially with the pressing of the school, and I know you all wanted to know these things.
This is fantastic to have.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
mean, you've done a lot of work, and
Yeah.
it's very much
It's been
appreciated.
2 days with Ann,
say,
me,
it's only
and
been
we've
10
had
days.
6 or 7
I know,
meetings.
I know.
Lots of stuff with Public Works, we're doing police tomorrow, some block
Yeah.
monthly meetings, so.
Can I say one more thing? I just think that Amy's point actually is worth paying attention to, that the school department was told what their deadline is, and they have met their deadline. And they've worked their butts off to get their deadline met. I'm gonna just keep making my pledge. I think we need to vote on Monday regardless of all other things. It's important. Do you want to say your last piece?
But how do you feel, Casey? How do you feel?
Yeah. I think we can hope for the best and trust the process and trust that the numbers will come in tomorrow and they'll look good for the rest of the departments. They won't be too crazy, in which case, if all that continues reasonable, the school department as it stands alone seems to me to be reasonable. I think it would be necessary to change things if the numbers come back and they're wildly
Right.
over what they were last year, then we'll have to make some decisions. But I
Yeah,
think as it stands now-
absolutely.
And I'm gonna try and get, I know this top sheet is a lot, once we can kind of see the percentages, all those as well. That's kind of, I think, square one for tomorrow, and then the second piece is another review with maybe Tammy and Michelle, and they're through the coals of these, and that, what's our degree of confidence, or, you know, where we're going from here, so.
Yeah, because with this, you've reduced the budget. So I just, you've reduced the budget from last year.
Yeah.
So
So
it just
why?
makes me think that something's missing.
There's
And
no
then
way-
there's FMLA and some other things, and yeah, we have a all management staff meeting, and we're going through piece by piece by piece, and that's one of my questions.
Labor negotiations, are those in here? Because we had 3 of them ourselves.
I'm not quite sure all of those are in here. The
So the
FMLA.
increase in salaries plus the payroll taxes that have to be included with that, I don't know if those are included in here.
I think,
Only 2 are complete. One is lingering but close.
Yeah, so I don't know, that might not be in here. So I have a feeling that something's got to be missing, 'cause with what we've seen that they've requested so far, we should
No
have.
one's gone down
Yeah,
yet.
we haven't seen.
Exactly.
Yeah, and there's been lots of requests for new employees as well.
Yeah,
So
and stuff.
something,
so where, yeah, in some ways, we have to find the lines that's creating this drop.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
So, just,
But that
What's
could be,
missing?
that could be in public, well, yeah, and that's the other thing, is the details of where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And I need, that's one of my other goals, is like, we need to get deltas in here on pluses and minuses, so I can say, okay, here's
Yeah.
where, on both the revenue side and on the details of the year to year.
And there's quite an increase in taxation, that just tells us where it's coming from, so, on that revenue sheet.
Is there any way to push the school board vote? It's probably already publicly posted, so you can't push it until after finance committee meets.
Yeah, no, it's already posted.
Plus really, like,
Our monthly meeting.
what could you possibly do in one day, like, where we're like, all bets are
Well,
off,
I mean,
like-
we always have, I mean, we've got 15, 16 drafts, you know, with increases, decreases. I mean, could we do changes in 24 hours? We could, because we've worked on it so much that we know exactly where everything is and what we could and what we couldn't live without. I mean, it's awful to say that, but you do have versions of, okay, if we had to get to this percentage,
Nuclear
this is
version.
everything we'd cut. And then, when you get to that point you can't live with and you don't feel good about, then you kind of, so we have drafts, so yes, if we had to, we could do it.
But there's other things that, you know, like the reserve for cabling, some things like that, that we're already, need to think about using the fund balance for, right? So,
Yeah.
so, one question or a thought, or maybe a statement is,
He's gonna.
An aphorism?
Just say, just say.
is, it looks to me like the municipal budget and the school ask from the municipality usually balances 50-50%, from what I can see. In other words, if it's a $30 million number, the school's 15 and the municipality's 15. So I guess the question that I would throw out in this thought process is, what is it that happens if the municipal side has a $1.2 million increase like the school has had?
Yeah.
In this rough talk, what does that do to Mr. and Mrs. Ellsworth? That's my question. While we're talking rough numbers, it's historic that I can see from what little bit that it's a 50-50 split of your ask of the taxpayer and the city's ask. So, and again, I'm not saying it's a solid number, I'm just saying that's, we're talking about rough numbers, I think that's something that we could look at.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Casey, and kind of, you look at these longer term ones, we have the new top sheet too, you know, the municipal side was, you know, outgrowing the school side for a long period of time too. And then the school starts, you know, and we kind of have back and forth here, they're about 50-50, sometimes municipal's over, sometimes the school's over. So the trend overall seems pretty consistent, but now that we have where we're at, point taken. I think there's once we go to the next, I think that once we get here with these budgets and kind of where we're at, that's kind of the other piece is, I felt like we were in some ways, running without our running shoes on, on not having those other pieces. And, once we finish these presentations, these are kind of the initial presentations for the actual budget. It's not really till that June council meeting that we need it. So we're going to talk to Ann about this, about building another budget book with new tabs, with everything we've talked about, and maybe giving you a little more bird's eye view in the great way that school has been doing on kind of the strategic orientation, where we're at, what you're getting for this level of increase. So you guys have just a little bit better view of, hey, we talked about the staff ask, you've sort of seen piecemeal so far. This is what they are. If you want to move forward, do we need some job descriptions with those and exactly what they're going to do?
Yes.
For that kind of granular description. It's not just we need an administrative assistant in X place, but this person for this salary range. And I have some questions there too. Even if we wanted to hire that person by the end of the year, if you're budgeting their full salary, you're not going to get near that by actual end of fiscal year. You're actually going to be 2/3 less. So does that actually mean we're going to go higher salary to clear that budget, or do we need to mark those down? There's some questions there and we're already seeing more turnover, which is putting strains on specific pieces of the organization, I think, that probably didn't exist, at a different economic time when the unemployment rate was higher and people were looking, so we're facing kind of different strains on our processes here. And I think I'll have a better picture of that now that I know all these details, for that next round. And we can be a little higher strategic level for the organization.
That's awesome.
Amy, can we get a copy of the PowerPoint?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, that's great,
Not
isn't it?
right now, but I mean, if
Oh,
you
I'm
could
gonna
email.
do it right now, because yeah.
Email us, that would be
Hey,
great.
Charlie, could
Yep.
you tell us the next few meetings, just because I've switched a little bit, so that I.
It's on the
see
website.
during my- Okay,
Yeah,
I can look it up on the
The
website.
next week's is going to be capital, TIF, ARPA. In
On the
addition,
17th.
Yeah, on the 17th. In addition to what
We
obviously
have a council meeting on Monday.
the regular council meeting.
That I remember.
The 24th is going to be
So just 2 meetings.
Police and fire and
police,
dispatch.
fire, dispatch,
EMS.
EMS. Yeah, and I think it's their side of the capital piece. But we're also going to be adding on that meeting probably a council meeting, a special council meeting to approve the grant funding on the water treatment plant, that we are still interested in that. And then there's another kind of something like that, because we have to by May 1st get your approval on that. And then the Northern Borders RC, it's MBRC, I can't remember the RC portion, but the Northern Borders grant also is.
Regional.
Regional Commission, yeah. They have a $1 million grant that we need to put in by May 5th. So those two things we're going to tack on to the police budgeting piece, because it's just a fun, busy spring around here.
Can you do me a favor? Can we do the meeting first and then do the budget?
Yes.
And
So-
that way, because the meeting will be hopefully straightforward, and then we can have the discussion on the budget afterwards.
Yeah, and I think we might be pushing, I know we talked yesterday, one of the things we tabled on the 640,000 for, I think, was the Oak Street storm sort of system, and there was just I know there was a lot of, so we're gonna.
Focus area 1,
What's that?
the focus area 1 thing?
Yeah, focus area 1. So I talked, I think it's Brent, and we're gonna get that one back on the books a little later. And we're also.
For a regular meeting, though.
Yeah, for a regular meeting, just so we can talk about it more, get a little more of the presentation. And then there'll also be the water treatment plant discussion. We had a really very interesting meeting today on kind of the critical nature of that, of how that needs to be. And Mike and that team's, I think their creative funding was what you
Yeah.
called it, John. And I had this vision of Mike going to the school department and just telling them how they can start pulling from different
You got
things.
pipes in the wall.
He really is. It's something to see when it's a good brain for it.
creative yet legal and ethical.
Yeah. I'm also gonna steal a
Important to
page from
say.
school's books. I have a few things that I was too fiscally responsible this year to bring in, but I think a few of them, I'd like to see a new website for the city, that's just like, it's our digital front door. It's more accessible, but I think that there is grant funding that we can chase, and, if we do approve more as comms side of things, that would be one of her responsibilities, to start chasing grants and arranging that project that we come back next year. And the other piece is just kind of our actual front door with the linoleum. They were in here taping the Pet Cemetery, I guess they filmed part of it here.
Yeah.
And it looks exactly like it looked when they filmed it.
This winter I was here on a weekend because we were doing the gifting experience for the children on Main Street. And it was literally snowing inside that lobby. Because there's a crack in the door where the two doors don't join.
Okay.
And the snow is coming in, it was snowing in here.
Yeah.
And I think it keeps getting alarmed too, like the police have to keep coming here because the alarms are
It
going
was
off on the
unbelievable.
door.
Yeah, it's, I mean, and also just thinking towards 2035, that's the 100-year anniversary of this building, and, start thinking of, Jim's doing the Lord's work, keeping this place together.
Are we all set, or is everyone ready to call it a night, or do we have anything else we want to discuss? Let's say that we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.